Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cracking open a comprehensive study guide to a body of water that honestly gets vastly misunderstood. From my viewpoint as a marine biologist studying environmental phenomena, it's so easy for us to just see oceans as these big, static expanses of water. But the Indian Ocean, it is a totally different beast. We aren't just looking at water today, we're essentially examining a massive, living thermal battery with its very own biological heartbeat. It's this incredible region where extreme environmental conditions directly dictate human survival, genetic evolution, and even global economics.
All right, let's dive right into our syllabus. First up, we'll cover current reversals and dead zones. 2. Winds driving early ocean trade. 3. Ocean geography shaping human DNA. 4. Choke points and maritime law. And 5. Rising seas and island threats.
So, Section 1. Current reversals and dead zones, the ocean's heartbeat.
Okay, picture this. Because the Indian Ocean is completely landlocked to the north by the massive Asian continent, it can't just vent its excess heat into the freezing Arctic like other oceans do. And this specific geography creates a wild phenomenon. During the winter, you have these winds blowing from the northeast, driving the currents toward Africa. But then in the summer, the intense heat of the Asian landmass causes those exact same winds to violently reverse and blow from the southwest. It's a twice-a-year monsoon reversal that physically forces the massive Somali current to completely change direction. It is literally an atmospheric flip that acts as the region's biological heartbeat, bringing up this nutrient-rich cold water to the surface. And that upwelling supports a marine food web that feeds millions of people. Without it, the entire region's ecology would just collapse.
But here's the catch with that life-giving heartbeat. It is under serious threat from the very nature of this ocean's temperature. Remember that thermal battery concept? Well, biologically speaking, warm water just cannot hold as much dissolved oxygen as cold water, and this creates what we call oxygen minimum zones, basically dead zones. These are vast, rapidly expanding layers of warm water, particularly over in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, where oxygen levels drop so low that marine life simply cannot survive. It's a pretty stark reality. The exact same ocean that provides this life-giving monsoon is simultaneously suffocating its own marine life as global temperatures rise and these dead zones keep expanding.
Moving on to Section 2. Winds driving early ocean trade, the first global economy.
So let's transition from marine biology over to human history for a second. Because those perfectly predictable biological and atmospheric wind patterns we just talked about, they actually functioned as the engine for the world's very first global economy, way before European exploration even kicked off. Early sailors didn't need GPS or advanced navigation. They literally just needed patience. They used the ocean's geography like a massive superhighway built on these predictable wind flips. By 100 CE, merchants were riding winter winds from Roman Egypt straight to India to trade, and then just hanging out, waiting for the summer flip to ride the wind back home. By 500 CE, Austronesian sailors used this highway to cross 4,000 miles of open water, bypassing Africa completely, just to settle Madagascar. And by the 1400s, Admiral Zheng He was projecting Chinese influence across the entire region with a fleet of 300 ships. So the biology and atmosphere of the ocean literally built the ancient world's global marketplace.
All right, Section 3. Ocean geography shaping human DNA. Biological adaptations.
Now, looking at the intersection of human biology and extreme ocean environments, specifically down in the waters around Indonesia and the Philippines, we have to ask a pretty staggering question. Can an ocean physically alter human DNA? Like, can living in an extreme marine environment for generations actually change the fundamental biological makeup of a human being? Well, to figure that out, we have to look at the Baijao people. They're famously known as sea nomads, and they've been living on houseboats and stilt villages, roaming these specific waters for over 1,000 years.
And the answer to that question is hidden in one staggering number, 50%. According to a really incredible 2018 study published in the journal Cell, the Baijao people have actually evolved spleens that are a massive 50% larger than those of their neighboring land-based populations.
This is just such a brilliant illustration of human biology directly responding to the extreme demands of an ocean environment. Their enlarged spleen essentially acts like a built-in biological scuba tank. Because the Baijao subsist by freediving for fish and sea cucumbers at depths of over 200 feet, their bodies had to adapt. During a deep dive, that massive spleen contracts and releases a surge of oxygen-rich blood cells right into their bloodstream, which lets them hold their breath for minutes at a time underwater. It is a stunning, real-world example of a coastal population undergoing genetic evolution driven entirely by their unique ocean conditions.
Section 4. choke points and maritime law, bottlenecks of trade.
Okay, let's zoom way out from microscopic DNA to massive human constructs, because the Indian Ocean is also heavily defined by its geographic fragility. Look at its choke points. Up to the northwest, you've got the Strait of Hormuz, passing 20 million barrels of oil every single day. And over to the northeast, the Strait of Malacca narrows to an incredibly tight 1.7 miles wide in some spots, yet it literally carries the essential energy supply for China, Japan, and South Korea. A blockage in either of these geographic bottlenecks would effectively freeze the entire global economy in a matter of days.
To put that into perspective, 40% of the entire world's seaborne oil trade moves through this single ocean. It acts as the absolute jugular vein connecting the oil fields of the Persian Gulf directly with the massive factories of Asia and the homes of Europe. The physical layout of this ocean easily makes it the most geopolitically secured and intensely monitored body of water on Earth.
And what's wild is that this high-stakes geography actually birthed modern international law. See, for millennia, the Indian Ocean was this completely open, free trading zone. But when the Europeans eventually showed up, they tried to close it off and tax it. This sparked a massive geographic trade war, which really boiled over when the Dutch seized a Portuguese ship right in the Singapore Strait. That specific conflict prompted a jurist named Hugo Grotius in 1603 to write Mare Liberum, which translates to the free sea. He essentially argued that because the ocean is biologically and physically fluid and infinite, it just can't be owned as property. And that one single argument, born straight out of an Indian Ocean bottleneck, is still the very foundation of all international maritime law today.
Which brings us to Section 5, Rising Seas and Island Threats, the Disappearing Land.
We've arrived at the final and, frankly, the most sobering chapter of our study guide. As we talked about earlier, the Indian Ocean is this massive thermal battery, and as it warms up, the water literally, physically expands. This poses an immediate, existential environmental risk to the island nations sitting right at its mercy. The absolute most dramatic example of this is the Maldives. It's an archipelago made up of nearly 1,200 coral islands, and it happens to be the lowest country on Earth. The average natural ground level there is merely 1.5 meters above sea level. Think about that for a second. The highest natural point in this entire nation is literally lower than a standard basketball hoop.
So this geographic reality is forcing some pretty desperate real-world action. The Maldivian government is basically fighting for its life against the warming sea. A while back, they even held official cabinet meetings underwater in full scuba gear just to grab the globe's attention. But more drastically, they're heavily relying on geoengineering now, dredging up massive amounts of sand from the seafloor to physically build brand new, higher artificial islands like Halumale, just to have a safe place to relocate their citizens. They are doing absolutely everything possible to avoid becoming a ghost state. That's a country that exists legally on paper, but has literally no physical land left above the water. And that brings our narrative full circle to this one final provocative thought. What actually happens to a nation, to its distinct culture, and to its people when its land physically disappears into the biology of the sea? The Indian Ocean isn't just some big body of water. It is a dynamic, living force that has birthed global trade routes, fundamentally altered human DNA, and defined the laws of our international waters. As it warms and expands today, it serves as this incredibly powerful reminder of the ocean's unforgiving power over our human history and definitely over our shared future. Keep that in mind as you continue exploring our incredible planet. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.